Hello everybody, welcome to Also Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. About half of the people that watch these videos are not subscribed, so if you fall into the 50%, then please subscribe. Also drop a like on this video, it only takes 1 second and makes a massive difference. And again, I will reiterate, subscribe because I am going to be doing playoff content on the channel, post-game recaps to nearly every playoff game. So if that is something that interests you, then subscribe to the channel. But with that out of the way, today I am going to be just reflecting on the 2021 season. I decided that I would do this because I did make a documentary on the 2019-2020 season, a mini documentary that is like 24 minutes long, and I don't know that I'm going to do that for this year, and this is obviously very different from a very planned out scripted documentary, but I figured I would just reflect on this season. Ironically, I was planning on doing this video, and then Kenny, King of the Fourth Quarter, did a video like this on his second channel, and then was like, but then he also said he wants other YouTubers to do it, so I was like, I don't think people will care if I do a video I was already planning on doing that Kenny just beat me to the jump on. So yeah, this season was interesting, to say the least, but it's not as wild as last season was. That's why I don't think I'm going to make any kind of huge scripted season reflection or anything like that. Season starts off with the James Harden trade, and actually that was almost a little bit of vindication to me because for quite a while now, I'd been saying the possibility of Harden being somewhere outside of Houston for the last pretty much ever since they traded for Russell Westbrook, and really actually not just that, but the last year Chris Paul was there, I was like, James Harden could leave Houston, and I don't think people are acting like that's a real possibility. And when I saw it happen, I was like, look, I was right. Yeah, James Harden traded. That was obviously huge. Him going to the Nets, if we're talking about me being right, I also thought that would be kind of a mistake because those guys would butt heads. And it is worth mentioning a little bit that they've only played like 10 games together, like the three of them. So we could potentially see a bit of awkwardness there in like a playoff scenario. But for the most part, I think the Nets are just fine. So that is like a huge trade. Last year, or I guess in the offseason before the year started, we had the Anthony Davis trade. So we've had two superstar trades in a row. I don't think that streak is going to continue. I can't think of any superstar caliber player who's going to be traded anytime soon unless something just comes completely out of the blue. So got to appreciate that when it happens. I always appreciate a huge trade when it goes down. One, because views, and two, because I love shit like that. It's very interesting to just ponder on what a team can be, and as we saw with the Nets this year, pretty fucking good is what they can be. Jokic is the MVP this year. I feel like that should be no question, but apparently it is. There were some people on Harden for MVP, but like my point with that was if he didn't get injured, he was going to be playing so many games with Kevin Durant and Kyrie that I think that would have diminished his case just because people are like that. And also I should mention that when I talk about MVP, very often I'm just referring to what people are generally going to do, not necessarily my own opinion. To some extent, my opinion, the most valuable player is the most valuable player, and that exists outside of pretty much any context. Like, the most valuable player is kind of Steph Curry, but the way the MVP is voted upon and the way NBA fans vote on the MVP is not that. So Jokic is the MVP by the standard of the MVP. Even though the seed is not as high as it typically is, he is I think he's like 1.5 assists and a couple percent off free throw percentage wise, and maybe 3-point percentage wise since I last checked, because it's been a little bit, away from like a 28 point triple double average on 50, 40, 90. Like, he's not far off from that being what his numbers are. Obviously, the season's over, so he's not getting there. But to put up numbers in that kind of ballpark is absolutely fucking ludicrous. And he's got to be the MVP for that alone. He's not the flashiest player in the world outside of his passing, but he's a damn good player, and he's been like the second best player in the league this year. After Steph, because I just think Steph has been the best player in the league this year by far. And he proved that time and time again to close out this season, especially. He shot 16 threes a game in the last 10 games, and honestly, you should just do that all the time. You might as well. So yeah, that's the MVP race. I'm not going to talk about all the awards just because I'm probably going to make a main channel video about that. But that happened. I can talk about the Bulls real quick just because that's what I'm one to do. The Vucevic trade was huge, and really that was the only in terms of just a name and an all-star caliber player, that was the second biggest trade of the season. Obviously, you're not going to top the James Harden trade, but that was a big deal. Pretty disappointing first go of it. But it is worth mentioning that historically, making trades midway through the season does not typically make a big difference. It's just because you want to have the training camp with that player. You want to have it established from the beginning of the season, all the way from your personnel to your system. Having a new player who's going to be a huge part of the system and a foundation of it. The first time the Bulls played, they didn't even get a chance to practice with Vucevic. It was just like, okay, there's now an all-star post-scoring and passing and three-point shooting center on this team who is not the great defensive player, or at least good defensive player Wendell Carter is. So, yeah, have fun, play the Spurs right now and see what happens. And it didn't go well. But I don't want to harp on that too much. This season, injury is a huge thing. I think Kenny mentioned in his video that the report suggests that actually injury-wise, it's not actually that bad. But the thing about that is it really seems like it's the big names. Now, obviously, the big names are inherently going to stick out when those injuries happen. But it just feels like big name-wise and good team-wise, especially the Lakers, injuries have been a huge factor. It's been a huge factor for the Nets this year, huge factor for the Sixers because Joel Embiid went out for a good while. Just the fact that that injuries are happening to the big names makes it feel that way. Jamal Murray, obviously his ACL tear, got to talk about that. Just losing a lot of the top players in the league made the NBA not so fun. Tyrese Halliburton got a season-ending injury. Jaylen Brown got a season-ending injury, which completely ruins any hopes for the Celtics. LaMelo Ball got an injury and missed a good chunk of time. I know nobody's really looking for him, but Gordon Hayward missed a good chunk of time and is still missing time right now. And these are just names off the top of my head. Of course, LeBron James Harden missed big chunks. Anthony Davis missed big chunks, and he barely played like Anthony Davis this year as a result of that. So injuries are a huge factor. And also, I just have to say, especially for the Western Conference, this year it really feels like there's so many teams that could win the conference. Like, if you're going down the list, like, I could see the Mavericks going all the way to the conference finals. I could see even the Warriors if everything, we get a We Believe part 2, which everyone's talking about ever since Steph pulled his jersey up and showed his chest like Baron Davis did for the We Believe Warriors. Yeah, there's so many teams in the West that could come out. In terms of the Eastern Conference, not as much depth to it, to be sure, and that's kind of how it's always been. But the West is absolutely a bloodbath. As for the talk of another thing Kenny said in his video, and this is, I wish I made this video before that fucking video, because now I'm just pointing to what he said that I was going to talk about. In terms of parity, which he talked about in that video, he said that he feels there's parity. I don't know why. I kind of have a gut feeling that the Nets might disappoint us. Maybe the Clippers just completely fucked with my head in terms of what to expect from teams, but I kind of have a feeling like they're going to give us a little bit of a disappointment. Not necessarily they don't win a championship, but it might be a little bit more difficult than I and everyone else is really giving it credit for. I have a feeling about that. But that's the gut feeling versus the logical point of view on it, which I don't know how different those two are. I guess they are, but my head will say this is what is going to happen, this is what should happen, but my gut goes, well, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Literally, as I am talking about my gut, my stomach rumbles, so that's perfect timing. But yeah, there's tons of stuff that happened this season. The Rookie of the Year race was very entertaining. LaMelo coming out of the gate being so much better than expected early, and making me even more upset that the Bulls did not get a top 3 pick. Anthony Edwards was great this year. I'm trying to think. This is definitely something that would stand to be scripted just to make sure you don't miss shit. There's probably something obvious I'm missing. Oh yeah, I was going to talk about this at the start, and the season almost shut down again. There were multiple things with the health and safety protocols where I was like, dude, at this point, too many players have it. Too many teams are losing games as a result of these protocols. Jason Tatum had his health thing all year where he's been using an inhaler. There's been other instances of things like that. There was a point in the season where I made a video where I was like, you guys probably need to shut the season down. Like, this is getting borderline dangerous. And, you know, just because we came out on the end and it's fine now does not mean there were not problems then. And the consequences in terms of life and death in something like that will probably never truly be known. It's no different than pretty much any other sports league and many other major corporations. But it was still kind of a problem. And like I said, we'll never actually know the true harm that came from the potential risk of spreading the virus, having fans come in arenas, and how that complicates things and could potentially lead to loss of life. Things like that is not a happy note to end on. But that was a big thing this season, and for the last couple of months, especially with everybody getting vaccinated, and the league just being a lot better with their health and safety protocols, it's not really a concern now. I think last time it was 1 out of like 400 and whatever players are in the NBA was had the virus, so that's a pretty good ratio. They figured that out, and it's pretty much good now. Although I still think the Utah Jazz shouldn't have 14,000 fans in attendance. I don't even know the Jazz had that many fans. And also, there's like a conversation of, is that fair? Because a lot of teams only have 3 to 5K fans in the arena, and the Jazz have like nearly max capacity already. So that's something. But yeah, I don't think the Jazz would have that many fans in the arena, at least until it's up to the point of herd immunity. Whatever. This is getting into a whole different conversation. This season, overall, if I was going to give it a grade, I'd probably give it a C-. Honestly, this regular season, all the injuries, the risk of the season going overboard, all the inconsistency, the health and safety protocols. Just in general, this season is kind of eh. There's plenty of good things about it, to be sure, but there's a lot of things that prevented this season from being as good as it could be. So yeah, that's my reflection on the 2021 season. I give it a C. So yeah, that's it. Bye bye.